Okay, here we have a 2003 Ford, and it's a E250. And what it is, the customer complains of a noise in the suspension when they go over bumps. So let me just show you what we found. And when you jack it up and you take the weight off of the suspension, you can see that there's something going on in here. And you have to check a little bit further and see that the ball joint is actually no good. The ball joint's got to be changed. So, and where the ball joint is underneath the vehicle, down inside here. There's a lot of movement inside that joint there. So let me get the wheel off and you'll have a better view, and I'll show you how it's going to be repaired. The movement that we're getting is actually coming from the lower ball joint. That's right inside here. I'll show you when I rock it here like this. See that movement in the joint? And over in the upper one, the same thing. Once you got that movement in there, you're going to be changing both the ball joints, both the upper and the lower at the same time. So let me show you what I'm going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the outer tire rod end first here. We're going to remove the brake caliper off of the car. We're going to take the knuckle off, and we're going to remove this rotor here too. So let me get some tools, and I'm going to show you what to do. First thing we're going to do is always get the brakes off there. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the caliper off the car, and what we're going to do is we're just going to pry the caliper back very little, just to recess the piston a little bit so we can get it to come off without any kind of issues. And what you do is you just get in here with a screwdriver and you get it behind the piston and you pry it out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take off the caliper, and there's bolts in the back of the caliper. They're actually Torx back here. So we just get the Torx bit that fits in there, and we're going to remove the caliper from the truck itself. So you unscrew the caliper bolts first, and then we're just going to relocate the caliper out of our way so we can work in here. Once you break them loose, you can usually take them out by hand. We're going to disconnect the anti-lock brake sensor here too, and we're going to unplug it from right in here. And the way you do that is you just press in on that little tab right here. Press in on the tab and you pull it. And you just rock it back and forth and you unplug it, and then we can take the caliper off of the truck. We don't want to leave the caliper hanging, so we're going to support it. We're going to hang it by a hanger just to get it out of the way so it's not dangling by the hose. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take off the mounting knuckle here. If you have air, you can do it with air. If you don't have an air gun, you can take it off with a ratchet too. Be a little bit tight. You can use a breaker bar to take it off, or if you have just a regular ratchet, you can take it off with a regular ratchet also. can relocate the bracket out of the way. Obviously, we're going to be reusing the bolts that came out. We just put them off to the side. Okay, and we're going to take the rotor off of the car also. And the way we're going to do that, I'll grab some tools and I'll show you. We're going to open this up. The way you get the rotor off is you just take a big pair of pliers and you knock the cap right off of it. And then there's going to be a cotter pin that you need to remove, and that's right here. You just take that cotter pin out, push it up a little bit and get a pair of pliers, and you can pull it right out. And the way you take this nut off here is you just get in there with your channel locks or whatever you have, and you unscrew the nut off like this. Just rock it a little bit, and the bearings come out, and then the rotor just comes right off like that. Okay. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to come over onto this side here, and we're going to bend this cotter pin here up and out of the way. We're going to take this cotter pin out here also, and we're going to take out the nut on this one. The cotter pin, and then we're going to remove this nut right here. Again, if you have air, you can shoot it off with air. If you don't have air, you can take it off by hand. That. And now what we're going to do is we're going to separate the tie rod end from the knuckle. And the way we're going to do that is you can get in there with a fork, and you can use a fork on that to do it, or you can do like I do. You just bang on the side of the housing right here, and you just bang on that and it'll pop up. And it pops up and out of the way. Looks easy, but I've been doing this for a long time. I know you're going to have a little bit of a problem with that, but you don't hit the tie rod end itself. You hit the knuckle right here, and it'll pop right out. All right. Next thing we're going to do, I'll grab this and I'll show you. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out that cotter pin right there, and then we're going to remove this bolt right here, and we'll get the knuckle off. So let me get started on that. A little penetrating oil makes it go a little bit easier. All right. And we're going to take out the upper bolt on the ball joint first, and then we'll proceed to the lower. You can use air on it if you have it, and if not, you can do it with a ratchet. We take this bolt totally out. And we're going to reuse this again, so don't throw it away. We need to put this bolt back in there. Spray everything up really good with some penetrating oil so that it comes out a little bit easier. And the next thing we're going to do is on the lower ball joint here on the bottom there, we're going to take that cotter pin out. And we take that cotter pin out the same as we've taken out the other ones. Just take them and twist them to the side. And then you pull the cotter pin out like that. Looks easy, but a lot of times the hardest part of the job is getting out a rusty cotter pin. So have patience. All right, let's get a wrench and we're going to disconnect that joint. Okay, then we're just going to remove that nut right there. Now, let me just show you this. This is actually a socket can get in here. It's a 1 1/8 inch socket, but the problem you have is you're not going to be able to get the tool up on top to get it out of there. So you're going to have to use a wrench, an open end wrench, box end wrench, and you put it on there, and you can unscrew it totally out and take that nut totally off. You got that nut off. Now we need to get the knuckle off of the car itself, or truck itself. As you're going to find, it's going to be a little bit difficult to get this off of here. So what I usually do is I get in here with a chisel and I open the top up just a little bit, not much, just a little bit so it comes out of there. And now this we have to knock out down here. And the way you would do it is you could use a fork to get inside here and you can knock it out like that. All right, if you don't have a fork, you can just beat on it with a hammer and you may be able to get it to break loose. But a fork is usually the easiest way to get it to separate. And you put it in here and you just, bang on it until you get it to pop out. Now I put the nut back on because I didn't want it falling on the floor. So. And you see how it popped down? Now we have it out. We'll take our fork out. We'll remove this chisel, and now the knuckle is pretty much out of the car or truck. Take the screw out with a nut, and it comes right out like this. All right, now we're going to get it over onto the bench where we can work a little bit, and we're going to knock these out. You can use a press if you have a press at your location. If you don't have a press, I'm going to show you how to do it without using a press and do it by hand. A little bit harder, but you can do it. Let me get all set up and I'll bring you over to the bench. We'll get started on this. You're going to be wearing safety goggles because you're going to be pounding on this thing and you don't want to get any metal in your eyes if it happens to chip off. So wear your safety goggles before you go any further. Put this up in place like this, and now we're just going to beat on this here. And we're going to slowly knock that out of there. So. The key is you have to hit it in the center of it. You can't damage the end. this out, and we'll come right back. What you do is you put this in a vise like this. Now obviously if you can do it with the press, you do it with the press. But I'm just showing you for an example of how to do it without a press. Alright? You just take the top and you bang it out. And obviously you're going to replete it back in the same way. Now, even though you only saw me bang this a couple of times and knocked it out, it really was a pain in the rear end trying to knock that bottom joint out all the way. All right, now to reinstall it, the thing we have to do is we have to put the lower ball joint in first. And the reason you're going to do that is because you got to drive it in through here. You have to drive this down into the knuckle right there. So we're going to put it in through the top right here first, and we're going to press this down. Obviously, if you have a press, that's the way to go. If you don't have a press, you can improvise. You can use some tools. What I use is an extension that I sacrificed to use as a driver to get it through inside here, because I've had this problem before. Alright, so the best thing you're going to do now is you're going to grease everything up before you start putting it together. A little bit of grease makes everything go a lot smoother. So grease up the knuckle and grease up the joint. And we're going to get started on. We're going to put this into the vise here to hold it so we can drive it down. We're going to put it in like this. We're going to put this through the top here, and then we're going to drive that joint down into the knuckle. So let me get started on that, and I'll show you how it goes. Obviously, if you have a press, it's a lot easier, but I'm just showing you if you don't have a press. Now, I should know, the ball joint is going to stick down a little bit further down, so you have to make sure that the vise, or whatever you have it on, is open sufficiently to be able to drive it down into there. Now, it's in all the way. To be truthful with you, it's not easy doing it this way. I'm used to doing it with the press. It's a lot easier with the press, but that's basically how you would do it if you had to do it on the street and you didn't have the press to do it. Last thing you want to do is you want to put your snap ring back onto the bottom of your joint here. You just spread the snap ring open, you put it into the groove where it's there, and that's it. The bottom ball joint is done. The upper ball joint we're going to do the same way. We're going to grease everything up real well. Right? Everything is all greased up. We're going to grease the inside of the knuckle. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to drive this down into there too. So let me get started on that. Again, remember, you're going to put it in the vise. And then we're just going to drive it down into the knuckle. Have it into the knuckle. We're going to put the rubber seal on it. Same thing on the bottom. We're going to put the rubber on it, and now we're going to bring it over to the truck, and we're going to reassemble it. So let's get over there. Okay, now we're getting ready to put the knuckle back onto the car, and what we're going to do is we're going to install the grease fittings before we put it back onto the truck. We'll just screw the fitting in by hand. Most of the time these holes are threaded already, so we'll just screw them in and catch them. And then once you catch them, you can tighten it up with a wrench, and you want to make sure that you screw it in as almost all the way as far as it'll go. And we're going to make sure that the fitting points to the back of the truck so we can get in there fairly easy and grease it. Same thing on the lower ball joint. We're going to catch it by hand, and then we'll screw it in with a ratchet. Alright, so that's how we do that. Now we'll put the knuckle back in, and we'll tighten up the bolts, and I'll show you how that goes. Okay. Remember, you want to have everything greased up pretty well here so it slides fairly easy when you get it back together. So I'll put a little bit of grease on it. And the way you put it back in there is just the reverse of how you took it out. And you just rock it back and forth, and you catch your nut. Tighten the nut down as far as you can by hand. And then we'll tighten it up the rest of the way with a wrench. Right now we're not going to do anything with the upper, we're just going to get the bottom tightened up all the way first. Line up your cotter pin, and you have to tighten it in a little more to line the cotter pin up. Alright, then once you have it lined up, you just slide your cotter pin through, push it all the way through, and you can turn it, and you just bend your cotter pin up on the other side so that it doesn't come out. We have that in there, and then we're going to reinstall the bolt. Actually, I was mistaken before. I said you had to reuse the other bolt. They actually gave you a new one with the new ball joint. So we're just going to screw it in as far as we can by hand, and then once you get to a point where you can't go any further, tighten it down pretty tight with your ratchet so you can proceed to the next step. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to reattach our outer tie rod end here. And basically, you just put it right through the knuckle. And just tap it down a little bit. Put your nut on here. Now, if you have air, you can shoot it on with air. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to use the air. I can tighten it up with a ratchet. And then you line up the cotter pin, which looks like it probably is lined up. Slide your cotter pin through. And then you cotter pin over. All right, so now your tie rod end is on. Your knuckle is top and bottom is both tight. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to reattach our, put our rotor back on, and we'll get that back together. Slide your rotor along the way. And then we're going to reinstall our wheel bearings. And then you screw your nut on here by hand. You had your wheel bearing and you had that little washer you put back on. Just reverse the procedure when you took it off. And what we're going to do is we're going to tighten it up. And then if you recall, we have this little piece that the cotter pin goes through. We're going to put that there. Let me grab a new cotter pin. Slide your cotter pin through. And again, you just bend the cotter pin over and up, like that. And just tap it so it's flush. Then you're going to reinstall your dust cover back on here. Don't beat it on too hard and bend it. Just tap it on. That's it. And now your rotor's reattached. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our mounting bracket back on here. Slide it over where it came off. And you can grab your bolts that you previously took out and catch the bolt in them by hand first before you tighten anything up. Tighten them up with your ratchet. And make sure they're pretty tight. Same thing on this one. Now obviously if you want to use air, you can use air to tighten it on. Okay, now we have the mounting bracket is on. Now we're going to reattach our rotor, and we'll put that back on now. They previously hung it so that we wouldn't damage the hose, and the caliper has to mount on with this little ear underneath the knuckle, like that. And then you push the bottom in, and it pops right in. There's two slide pins that we had previously taken out. Screw them in by hand, bolted them. You catch the bolt of them before you tighten it up all the way. And then we tighten them up with our ratchet. Top one up. Alright, that's tight. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to reattach our ABS sensor. Make sure it goes back into the holder where it was disconnected from, because you don't want it to accidentally get caught in the wheel or ripped up. And then plug it back together, and then slide it back onto its attachment right here, and that's pretty much it. So let me just go over a couple of things with you we're going to talk about. We know that the lower ball joint is tight. We know that the upper ball joint's tight. We know the tie rod end is tight. We have the rotor mounted on. We put the cotter pin back in there. We tightened the nut down first. We reattached our mounting bracket and tightened it. Put our caliper back onto the bracket and tightened it. We plugged in our ABS sensor, and that's it. We're all done. Okay, and the last thing we're going to do is we're going to put grease into the grease fittings down underneath the bottom right here that we previously installed here and down here. So we'll get some grease in here, and that's it. We should be all set. All right. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to proceed to the next side. We'll get that done, and then we're going to reset the wheel alignment. All right, so good luck. If you have any questions, any comments, any information you need, just drop me a line. I'll be more than happy to help you out. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.